Don't you just love the smell of gun smoke and pipe tobacco in the morning? I'm telling you, nothing could ruin this day.
Socialism, the monster hiding under America's bed.
Oh God, please don't.
Our chupacabra, our Candyman. Say it 3 times into a mirror and your kid goes to college for free.
Please, for the love of God, don't ruin my day with this.
Americans are so used to demonizing socialism that most don't really know what it is, or they're shy to admit that they're curious about it.
Come on, man. My vacation can't be over already. I just finished finals. Could you at least give me a day to relax?
Like how most adults are afraid to watch the Twilight series because what if they discover they're totally on Team Edward?
Jesus Christ, she's talking about a political philosophy that's killed millions like she's doing a top 15 list of best handbags under $30. Okay, a little out there for the comparison, but still, this is torture I'm just not ready for, man.
But thanks to a 76-year-old self-described democratic socialist, and now a whole host of candidates running openly as socialists, maybe it's time to understand it.
Nope, I'm not doing it. This is a lethal dose of commie cancer, man, so fuck you, I'm not doing it.
We're looking at some of the biggest myths told about the S-word.
Fuck it, I guess I'm doing it.
Hit it, Kay!
This is a homage beat.
We've all heard socialism described by the right. You wait in lines for hours, you eat what little nutrients are available, and everyone wears the same thing. Why does socialism sound a lot like Disneyland?
Well, in that case, the Cubans must love the Pirates of the Caribbean ride.
Socialism is a favorite straw man of the right, used to disparage any candidate that mentions anything that resembles something like generosity.
No. Generosity is voluntary and comes from a place of kindness. Socialism is theft on a grand scale and requires force to be implemented. If that's what you think generosity is, then you're a bitch.
Whether it's Barack Obama or Bernie Sanders. And instead of including socialist voices on television to clarify, they actually have segments like this.
I got to go to the liberal panel. It's got to be tough for you to look at your candidates and see how boring and stiff they are. They're stiffer than you.
Well, they are. Well, thanks a lot.
Really? You're going to use a comedy bit from Fox News to prove your point. What, were there so many legitimate criticisms of socialism you had to rely on a fucking joke to discredit your opposition?
But they did talk about policy, unlike the Republican debates, and it's not socialism, it's capitalism, it's democratic socialism within a capitalist society. You want to talk about giving stuff away?
Yeah.
It's giving stuff. What Republicans do is give stuff to the top 1%. Is Social Security socialism? Medicare socialism?
Yes.
Medicaid socialism?
Yes.
You want to take all that away?
I do. I want to take all of it away.
See
you
how that
stupid
works
panel.
in the campaign.
I want to take it all away. I don't want the government taking my money. I can spend it better than they can, and I can't believe I'm yelling at you again.
Oh my God. Greg Gutfeld just lost an argument to an animatronic gag he scripted to make himself look smarter. That's like getting your ass kicked by a punching bag.
How exactly did he lose the argument? What he just said, in my opinion anyway, should be the only thing that anyone has to say to oppose socialism. It's my money. I can spend it how I want to. And the government can suck my left nut. Okay, maybe I'm paraphrasing a bit on what he said, but you get what I mean.
Seriously though, there are many different definitions of socialism depending on who you ask. And just because a country has socialist policies doesn't mean it's a socialist country. There are degrees of socialism. So let's just start out with a safe Wikipedia description. Socialism is a range of economic and social systems characterized by social ownership and democratic control of the means of production.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The most complicated way of saying theft I've ever heard.
That sounds pretty harmless, and yet, of course, that's what a collectively edited, non-profit, free encyclopedia would say, and look how that turned out. Oh, pretty good.
Wait, you actually believe that a group of individuals volunteering their own time and resources to edit a web page is comparable to socialism? Maybe if the people who designed it threatened to execute them if they didn't. Now that would be socialism.
You can think about socialism as democracy for the economy, an economy that takes planning and forethought and doesn't just leave wealth distribution to the invisible hand of the market, which, in case you were wondering, looks like this for the 99% of us.
Yep. Instead of relying on supply and demand to determine what goods are needed where naturally like capitalism, it utilizes a central planner to decide what goods are needed where and in what quantity. The problem with this is that it is absolutely impossible for one person or even a group of people to know what goods and services are in demand at any one time. And even if they managed to calculate everything the market needed at a given time, by the time they'd be able to satisfy said needs, they'll have already changed. The demands of the market fluctuate far too rapidly for any kind of planned economy to be even remotely efficient. In order for it to work, a person would have to not only be able to read everyone's minds at once, but instantly satisfy all of their needs. Unfortunately, Professor X and the Flash are about as real as the labor theory of value.
And yet, instead of having an honest conversation about what a more democratic economy could look like in a country with the worst income inequality since before the Great Depression...
Really? Because inequality doesn't necessarily mean that people are worse off. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the average income in 2014 was $73,000 a year, and in 1940 it was $1,368 a year. Even when accounting for inflation, this is the equivalent of $24,560 today, a third of today's average income. So while there may be more inequality, people are making more money on average. So who cares if they're unequal as long as they're better off? To measure the success or failure of a system on whether or not everyone's equal is just childish.
We hear this.
Listen up, all you Bernie Sanders supporters. We'll say it again. Socialism doesn't work.
Socialism keeps failing.
This is Socialism 101. We've seen it fail over and over again. It's failing now because of problems inherent to socialism.
Myth number 1. Socialism's been attempted and failed. But has it truly? Critics point to examples of leaders who took a twisted version of Marxism and implemented it to the extreme.
Well, there really is no need to twist Marxism because it doesn't get any more twisted than utilizing violence to terrify opponents, stealing from innocent people, and denying basic human rights. Even the most benign version of Marxism means the denial of property rights and theft. It's a heinously coercive ideology that hinges on violence. It's the absolute worst form of statism possible.
Like Pol Pot of Cambodia or Stalin's Soviet Union. But those are better examples of totalitarianism than anything else.
Well, the two kind of go hand in hand, Toots. I don't mean to put a damper on the propaganda train here, but when your economic system requires complete state control of the economy, totalitarianism isn't far behind.
As Noam Chomsky, linguist and man who lost award for most desirable lefty grandpa to a younger, hotter Jew, put it, the Soviet Union wasn't actually socialist. He says Russia called itself that to trick those sympathetic to socialism, and the US did the same to make people more afraid of socialism.
Oh geez, wow, they must have really put the wool over our eyes on this one, boys. Fucking bamboozled. Those sneaky Reds pretended to be socialist all those years? I mean, we only have their economic plans that mirrored Marxism almost to a T, and literally every available piece of evidence imaginable that proves it was socialist, but you have what? A half-baked conspiracy theory from a man no real economist takes seriously? Like, at least the flat earth theory has a complex explanation for how its insanity could be true.
The core notion of at least traditional socialism is that what you mentioned, that working people have to be in control of production. The Soviet Union was the exact opposite of that. Working people had no control over anything. They were virtual slaves.
Well, as I discussed in my video Socialism is Slavery, the two are basically the same thing.
Also, why judge an ideology on its most extreme examples? That's like judging a love of baseball by the Red Sox fan who carved Red Sox into his forehead with a broken Miller Lite. Loving baseball is the least of his problems.
Yeah, but if almost every single baseball fan in existence started doing that, we might have to call into question why it's happening. And when we find the common thread to be a love of baseball, it might be a good idea to... fuck it. This was a really poor analogy. I can't say I didn't try to run with it, though. Anyway, as I pointed out, this isn't just one crazy socialist country doing it, it's almost all of them. And that's about as effective as the analogy gets.
Funny enough though, even baseball isn't safe from the myth that socialism has failed. Listen to this announcer calling a Dodgers game suddenly go off on socialism when a Venezuelan player steps up to bat.
Socialism failing to work as it always does, this time in Venezuela. You talk about giving everybody something free and all of a sudden there's no food to eat. Anyway, 0-2.
Fucking damn. That announcer's my new hero.
Oh my God. I truly hope that somewhere out there is a Spanish language announcer mentioning the failures of capitalism when calling an American soccer game.
Bueno, son malos porque no hay dinero en el fútbol. No es como el fútbol americano donde hay muchos momentos para publicidades. El capitalismo vence al deporte. Piénsenlo. 0-2.
Yeah, the socialists can go ahead and keep soccer. We prefer sports like boxing, MMA fighting, football, hockey, sports that require testosterone.
Yes, Venezuela is going through an insane political crisis right now, but it's not clear that that crisis has anything to do with their socialist policies.
It literally has everything to do with it. When's the last time you saw people in a free country breaking into zoos and eating lions because of a financial crisis?
And since that would take another 10 minutes to break down, instead, we threw a couple of links to articles below for you to read. Yes, read.
Yeah, they only list one article, and surprise, surprise, it's from Jacobin, a left-wing socialist news source, because they're not gonna be biased. That would be silly. I did read it, by the way, and just as I suspected, it's just complete and total garbage that claims it's the fault of Chavez for investing everything in oil. Even if that's true, all it does is help prove my point more. If all it takes to crash an entire economy this bad is one man's fiscal fuck-up, then why in God's name would you trust it?
But what we never hear when discussing Venezuela is how putting their nationalized oil money into social programs led to a dramatic reduction in poverty and an increase in literacy.
Yeah, and if I steal a shit ton of money from people, I could do the exact same thing. The problem starts when the money train runs out of steam, which is exactly what happened in Venezuela. They spent, and had nothing left when crisis hit. And I guarantee the people they stole it from aren't going to be around this time to get robbed again. That's what happens under socialism. You take everything from the rich, and as long as there's money to take, everything's fine. But the moment it runs out, all the people you took it from the first time are either gone or dead.
And how about Cuba? Has socialism failed there?
Yes. Yes, it has.
Cuba is not a democracy, for sure, but it also has the highest literacy rate in all of Latin America, not to mention free healthcare and free higher education.
Yeah, that's why thousands are fleeing in makeshift boats. Their education and medical care is so great they want to share it with America, as though free healthcare or education would make up for a flagrant disregard of human rights. As for both of these systems, reports have come out of patients having to bring their own bedding and supplies to these free hospitals, if you can even call them that. And the same poverty that plagues the island extends to their education system as well.
And now they're developing a lung cancer vaccine, and that means they'll be able to safely smoke all the cigars that we can't even import. Instead, we've been left with vaping, which is somehow less cool than cancer.
Oh my God, do you even hear yourself talking right now? Yes, of course. The fucking miracle vaccine of the century is going to come from the country that can barely feed itself and can't even afford beds for their own hospitals. Other amazing Cuban discoveries include talking dogs and unicorns that cure AIDS. It's time for you to grow up and realize people lie. The only way the Cubans came up with a vaccine for lung cancer is if starving to death counts as a vaccine. I mean, I guess you can't get lung cancer if you're fucking dead.
Another myth we hear is that socialism is too expensive. But too expensive for who?
The people you're stealing from to pay for it. That's who.
In France, the government covers all or pays back at least 70% of healthcare costs, which meant a lot when this couple had twins.
Even though the boys were delivered by cesarean section and Nomi spent 9 days in a private room, leaving the hospital they paid
19 euros.
19 euros! Coincidentally, the dollar price of an Uber ride to the ER in the US to avoid going into debt over an ambulance ride.
Does the price they paid really matter if the money used to offset the cost was stolen?
Compare that French experience to an American couple who went bankrupt after also having twins who were premature.
It was 2.2 million. Oh, we lost everything. We paid every bill we could. We sold everything we could. We sold our car. We sold our furniture. We sold our clothing. We liquidated our 401ks. We sold everything.
Jesus, But you might be thinking, well, France spends more money on healthcare, and you would be wrong. France spends 11% of its GDP, and the US spends 17.2% of our GDP on healthcare.
The French healthcare system is also unsustainable. Even people who are in favor of it have admitted that France spends way over its healthcare budget. France's debt has led many experts to believe they'll be facing an economic crash soon. Their total real economy debt is 280% of their GDP. Workers pay about 50% of their paycheck to healthcare. So I don't think the statistics you just cited really carry any weight in the face of that reality.
And France is consistently ranked as having one of the best healthcare systems in the world, while we clock in last when compared to the 10 most developed countries.
There were a lot of problems with that study regarding credibility. I'm not going to go over all of it for the sake of time, but I will put a link in the description to an article that does. I will say this though, some of the Commonwealth Fund's criteria were very vague and had nothing to do with the actual quality of care. Like for instance, accessibility, equity, and healthy lives. The last one is really important to note because healthy lives just means overall health of the nation, which has nothing to do with healthcare quality. For instance, if a country has higher rates of heart attacks or drug abuse, it would rank lower.
But on the bright side, Trump is working hard to make us not a developed country, so...
How? How has Trump in any way tried to make us an undeveloped country? He's cut back regulation and made peace with North Korea. So while I'm not exactly a Trump fanboy, I don't see how anything he's done would make us an undeveloped country. I just know some commie is going to watch this and say, she was obviously making a joke. And if that's the case, then she is just further proof that women aren't funny.
What about students? Is socialism too expensive for them? Because in many countries around the world, university tuition is essentially free. In Germany, it's even free for foreigners to benefit from, like Americans.
The first lesson of economics is that there's no such thing as a free lunch. And by that, I mean that everything has a cost. And if you aren't the one paying it, that just means someone else is.
I had heard things like I'd be able to drink, I'd have health care. Each month it cost about 600 euro to live here. My room, train tickets, school, food. My main motivation, of course, was saving money.
Was it? Because I'm pretty sure the first thing you said was you'd be able to drink, so I think that's where your money's gonna be going. You can take a boy out of South Carolina, but you can't take a tall boy out of his hand.
Yep, still not funny.
Germany doesn't see free college as a drain on the economy, but believes that investing in young people's education, even that of non-Germans, will benefit the German economy in the long run.
Yeah, and when those students get jobs, they'll be paying for the rest of their lives through taxes. Once again, nothing is free.
Compare that to how we pay for school in the United States, which is basically an FU-IOU, as student debt just hit $1.5 trillion. Though to be fair, student debt is a job creator for student debt collectors.
The problem of student debt wouldn't even exist if it hadn't been for government-subsidized student loans. When the availability of these loans increased, students stopped taking tuition costs into consideration. This meant that universities could charge whatever they wanted to for tuition and students would still pay for it. This is discussed further in a video by Seamus Coughlin. I'll put a link to it in the description below.
Germany's example flies in the face of another myth spouted about socialist policies, that they're not good for business. They stifle innovation and competition, and heavy regulations and taxes only make companies move abroad. Work for less. Bangladesh.
Yeah. How exactly does it disprove it? I mean, this has been proven over and over again. High taxes and regulations are bad for business. The more economically free a society is, the better off they are. Freer economies have less poverty, more labor participation, more innovation, and less income inequality. So yeah, you're wrong before you even made your point. How does that feel?
But take Denmark. The government spends a lot on job training and education, especially for the unemployed. And Danish companies participate in these programs because it means they have a stronger workforce. So when Danes get laid off, they get help learning a new skill that isn't putting together IKEA furniture for strangers. Mostly because they hate the Swedes. In 2015, Denmark was ranked by Forbes as being the best country for business and is consistently ranked as the happiest country on earth.
Yeah, and Denmark also ranks higher than the US on the economic freedom scale. And there happens to be a strong correlation between economic freedom and happiness. So, Thanks for helping me prove my point, Toots.
Something Fox News blowhards like Bill O'Reilly desperately try to find a way to undermine.
When I heard the Danes were the happiest people on earth, I thought back to my ancestors in Ireland who were beheaded and raped by the Danish Vikings. And I don't know if that was a happy experience.
Yeah, Bill, way to dunk on the libs by bringing up an unrelated grudge you've been carrying with you since the year 800.
Yeah, and Bill O'Reilly's done a lot of stupid shit. Don't see how that's proving your point.
Later in the same conversation, the intrepid reporters hit on another myth about socialism, the "it'll never work in America" myth.
There are 5.5 million Danes.
Right.
And that's it. We have 300 million people here, Bill.
Okay, this myth I really don't understand the logic of. If there are more people paying more taxes into a social welfare state, doesn't that mean more money? What, suddenly Americans don't know how to scale up?
You know, I actually agree with her on this one. Robbery can just as easily be scaled up.
We gave the world Starbucks, Walmart, and King Kong. We're all about scaling up.
Yep, still not funny.
Another myth about socialism is that it requires big government, and that government is not democratic.
Oh gee, I wonder where they'd get that idea. I mean, it's only a system that requires complete state control of the economy, the forced redistribution of wealth, and seizing the means of production. How could that possibly require big government?
But look at Norway, a country whose economic model has been called a 21st century version of socialism, and has also been ranked as the world's best democracy.
Oh great, democracy. The will of the majority crushing the rights of the individual. So happy to hear that your modern version of socialism, which takes place in a country with a mostly free economy, mind you, includes formalized mob rule. You're really winning me over here.
After the global financial crisis of 2008, Norway decided not to tighten its purse strings. Instead, under a socialist finance minister, federal control of financial assets in sectors like oil expanded, and the government directed that money into their sovereign wealth fund, or national bank.
So wait, another socialist nation is taking control of its oil industry to pay for itself? Just a second ago, you tried to say that was why Venezuela didn't pan out.
Which is part of the reason Norwegians enjoy benefits like universal health care, education, guaranteed parental leave, and oh yeah, no national debt.
Yeah, instead of borrowing money, they just steal it through taxation. So much better.
As far as democracy goes, Norwegians are automatically registered to vote, and 78% did in the last election, compared to our 55% in the last election. Not that the stakes were high.
Jesus, even in a video that has absolutely nothing to do with Trump, the left can't help but squeeze in a few poorly thought out jabs. It's fucking pathetic.
Norway has 9 parties instead of our 2, a parliamentary system of proportional representation instead of our winner-take-all system, and Norwegians have reindeer. Can we have nothing?
Who cares? You still haven't shown that democracy in and of itself is a good idea. In fact, if anything, with your constant Trump jokes, you've implied the opposite. The more democratic a nation becomes, the more it oppresses the rights of the individual.
When all of the myths above fail them, conservatives always resort to a final myth about socialism, which is capitalism is better.
Well, only if you're going by every available measurable statistic known to man or God. Freer economies have higher literacy rates, lower infant mortality rates, longer life expectancies, cleaner air, better environments, and are even happier than countries with less economic freedom. So how in God's name is that a myth?
Die-hard capitalists insist there is no alternative to their system. Sure, it's claimed as many, if not more, lives than socialism.
Are you sure about that?
How has the voluntary exchange of goods and services killed anyone at any point? Socialism has killed roughly 100 million people by even the most conservative of estimates.
From colonialism to rampant poverty caused by neoliberal economics to, oh yeah, the millions who died in wars fought to preserve its dominance, capitalism is still better.
Colonialism and war are the result of statism, not capitalism. As for poverty, once again, freer economies have lower poverty rates. So how exactly has capitalism killed more than the 100 million people socialism has?
Just watch how economist Milton Friedman, the Bunsen of free enterprise, defended his ideology in an interview with a barrage of whataboutisms.
But it seems to reward not virtue as much as ability to manipulate the system.
And what does reward virtue? You think the communist commissar rewards virtue? You know, I think you're taking a lot of things for granted. Just tell me where in the world you find these angels who are going to organize society for us.
In Norway, we've been over this. They're with the reindeer.
What I am sure he was referring to is the fact that socialism requires big government run by human beings who are by their very nature imperfect. Socialism requires a planned economy, which requires perfect human beings in order to function, because it is impossible for a human being to know exactly what the market needs exactly when it needs it. So I'll ask you the same question. Who are these angels that are going to organize society for us? And here's a tip, they're not in fucking Norway!
But if that kind of cynicism is what defends unfettered capitalism, maybe we should rethink it. But listen, I am happy to be proven wrong.
Good, because I just did.
Which is why I'm going to consult my conservative panel. Hey, conservative panel, what do you think about all these socialist myths?
What, they're not myths. They're not myths at all. Generosity is evil. If you give people free handouts, they're gonna have to eat rats out of buckets. And don't ask me to link cause and effects. Cause and effect is fake news.
Mr. Strawman, give me a break. Just shut your pie hole, for goodness sake.
Really? This is how you choose to end this video? With a literal straw man?
Okay, listen, conservative panel, I know you're confused and angry because things aren't always black or white. History is fluid, and your president is going down in a fiery ball of lies. But maybe keep an open mind about socialism. Capitalism is built on greed, which, as it turns out, is not best for either people or business, or the planet.
Everything we know about economics proves otherwise. Hell, even the environment is better off under a free economy.
Maybe capitalism could use some socialism. Americans are innovative and hopeful, so maybe the world has yet to see the best of socialism. And even capitalism.
You're talking about a mixed economy, right? Yeah, because why achieve excellence when you can settle for mediocrity?
Actually, Jesus turned the other cheek to ignore a homeless person.
How much can a person take? Mr. Strawman, give me a break.
Thanks once again for watching Newsbroke. If you haven't heard, this is our third to last video, which is oh so sad.
Aw, man. I was really looking forward to milking this lol cow in the future. But I guess all shitty things must come to an end. Anyway. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know it's been a while since my last upload, but I'm done with finals now, so that means I'm going to be uploading a lot more frequently. I'm planning on doing some collaborations soon, maybe some more live streams. It's going to be great. I also broke 50 subs a while back, and I want to do a Q&A special to celebrate. So leave any questions you want me to answer in the comments below. I'm so happy with the channel right now, guys. This recent growth has been amazing, and I can't thank you all enough for it. So, once again, thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like, subscribe, and comment below. And until next time, this has been Americap, your friendly neighborhood American capitalist. Goodbye.
We bop and hippity hop. I'm as happy as I can be. Whoa.